Hi folks, welcome to a special DairyLink webinar on animal health. I suppose first things first, we need to find out what DairyLink is. Many of you will be watching and following the progress of farmers in the DairyLink program through the Farmers Journal, on the videos and on the various media, through the Caffrey TV, etc., that kind of thing, in terms of what's happening to the DairyLink farmers. We have one virtual host farmer, John Oliver, lined up for today, but that's DairyLink. It's a cross-border initiative to monitor farms, I suppose, across the the Northern Ireland and into the top half of Southern Ireland, in terms of what's happening on farms, and try and impose best practice and technical efficiency on those farms. That's the objective of DairyLink. Supported by, and we have a good number of supporters, supported by Caffrey and AFBI from Northern Ireland, Teagasc in the south, MSD Animal Health, and Lakeland Dairies. So without those, it wouldn't be possible. So folks, I'm going to introduce you to, first of all, our panel for tonight's animal health webinar. We're going to be joined, first of all, by John Oliver, the host farmer from Limavady, County Derry. We're also going to be joined by Keith Laughlin, a vet. John Oliver is a vet. And we're going to be joined by the DairyLink farm advisor, Aidan Cushnahan, seconded to the programme from Caffrey. Okay, we're also going to be joined later on, or during the programme, by guests. Lakeland Dairies advisor Niall McCarron will join us. Sarah Campbell, technical advisor with MSD Animal Health, will join us. Our own Peter McCann from the Farmers Journal Northern Ireland team will join us. And we'll also be joined by Joe Patton from Teagasc to give us a feel for what's happening in the Republic on animal health. Right, John, if I was to come to you first, can you, first of all, I suppose, introduce yourself and introduce your farm and tell us who is the real John Oliver?
Hello, Jack. So we converted to dairying in 2015 from what was predominantly suckler cows and sheep. We have what I suppose you could call a hill farm in the Limavady area with 100 acres in and around the yard, and the same again in Upland Hill. The farm runs from around 300 to 600 feet above sea level. We're predominantly running around 100 Holstein Friesian cows, probably breeding towards more the EBI, a smaller, easier fleshed, hardier cow for the hill system. We're predominantly, or have been in the past, block autumn calving. However, I'm in the process of switching around to spring calving, just to make better use of the grazing infrastructure that we've put into place this last 3 or 4 years. We have also been winding down the sheep numbers, which has left a little bit more scope for increasing cow numbers, which I intend to increase now to maybe 115 or 120 this incoming year.
Good man, John. I mean, if I was to ask you kind of what's the objective of the farm or the business, like what kind of is your role, or what do you see your role being, and kind of what's the farm about? What do you set up to do?
Well, I'm not in dairy cows for the love of getting up in the morning and milking. I'm in it purely for what I see as a better return for my investment in farming, a good cash flow, and hopefully a little bit better than this moment, but a good flow of surplus cash to take out of the business, with a easy system that's easy to run, easy to manage, replicable, and easy to put somebody else on with regards to relief staff to look after and manage if I'm not here.
Good to get that, and good to get a feel for where you are. Keith, if I was to move to you, Keith Laughlin, you're the farm vet to John Oliver. Again, maybe just give us an introduction to yourself and to your practice and where the general area you're working in is.
Yes, hello, Jack. I'm Keith Laughlin. I am partner in a large mixed practice in North Antrim. Predominantly farm animal, again, predominantly big dairying area. A lot of our clients would be dairy clients. I've been working in the same practice for 34 years, and I've been working with John for about the past 3 to 4 years. Personally, my own time is spent mostly doing routine farm visits. Started off mostly as routine fertility visits, but it's progressing more and more into overall herd health planning. Got involved with health planning about 20 years ago. Got very excited about health planning, thought it certainly was the way forward and was the future for the industry. It has sort of over the years maybe got a little bit sidetracked into being a marketing tool rather than what it maybe was initially intended. So I'm quite interested in the work that DairyLink is doing. It seems to be hopefully maybe progressing to get that back on track to what a herd health plan should be.
Keith, yeah, exactly. In terms of the health planning, we're, as you say, hoping to try and kickstart that, not alone among the DairyLink farmers, but across farmers in the north and the south. Keith, in terms of your practice, is there a lot of dairy farmers, and I presume it's predominantly kind of all year round autumn calving type operators?
Yes, in North Antrim they would be very much spread calving pattern, quite a few housed all year round herds because of the climatic challenges that we face in the north coast. A wide range of farm sizes, but I would say our average farm size has grown over for the time that I've been in practice, has probably increased from about 70 to 80 cows to probably an average of 150 to 180 cows. And as I say, all sorts of different systems, but the majority are now using routine visits and doing routine herd fertility work.
Okay, right. You've given us a good feel for your type of work and the farms in the area. Aidan Cushnahan, if I was to come to you, your farm advisor to these DairyLink farmers and others as well. But I mean, again, maybe just introduce us to yourself, the type of work you're doing, how you're working with the DairyLink farmers, etc.
Thanks for that, Jack, and hello there, everybody. As you've already said, Jack, I'm acting as an advisor to the DairyLink farmers in the programme currently, having previously held the position of Dairy Development Advisor for dairy farms around Mid-Antrim for Caffrey. What do I do at the minute? Well, basically, I work with John and 5 other people in the project to develop their business skills and their business sustainability through the development and implementation of a business plan. Now, each of those plans are slightly different, but they all have common themes, which include the likes of focusing on improving soil fertility, improving the utilisation of grazed and conserved forage, and developing herd genetics with a view to improving yields of fat and protein or milk solids within their own businesses. And I'm also in the process of setting up a system of measuring and benchmarking a number of key performance indicators within those businesses. And within that, the project farmers are also committed to improving and maintaining their herd health status within their businesses. And to that end, each of those farmers have recently completed a herd health plan with their own local vets. And I suppose this is one of the reasons we're here today to discuss the process that John and Keith have gone through recently.
Keith, if I was to come to you first, in terms of, you said 20 years ago you had your real interest in it, and you still obviously have a real interest in animal health planning. But I mean, why should a farmer like John Oliver or any other farmer create an animal health plan? Like, what's in it for them?
The most immediate use of a herd health plan on a farm, why a farmer should have a herd health plan in place, is to have a written record of the protocols that actually should apply on that farm, so that he himself can reference those protocols, or any other farm worker or any temporary worker brought into that farm can have a reference point that the protocols will be there, so that the same thing is done time after time. Ensuring that there's consistency in the animal health side of things on a farm is very, very important to maintain the standards that are expected and that are required, so that there's no breakdown in animal health. With animal health plans, as I say, you have a protocol there for the various different diseases or the various different procedures that are to be carried out. They are important because in a herd situation, disease is not or animal illness, animal disease is not an individual condition. It's a symptom of the overall pattern of the herd. And so we need to build up a picture of the pattern of disease on the herd. Once you have that picture of pattern of disease on the herd, then with the animal health plan, you can move towards controlling that.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead right. So it brings a bit of consistency, it brings a bit of repeatability, it brings a kind of a real technical element once you have it written down there in front of you. I mean, Aidan, in terms of, the DairyLink farmers or other farmers that you're obviously working with, I mean, again, why should they? Is there anything else you'd see why they should create an animal health plan?
I think it's very important, Jack, that every dairy business has an animal health plan from a welfare and economic point of view. Particularly so when you look at Caffrey benchmarking figures for dairy businesses across Northern Ireland, you can see average replacement costs in those dairy herds are in the region of about £200 a cow. but in some cases exceed that by quite a bit. And when you start to look at other figures for what it costs to treat a case of, say, mastitis in UK dairy herds, where the average cost is estimated to be about £250 to £300 a cow, and an average case of lameness, which every dairy farmer experiences, costs in the region of about £320 a cow on average to treat. You can see that having an animal health plan which helps to minimise and prevent the risk of some of these cases happening will save that farmer quite a bit of money.
Yeah, you're right. So the economics is a big driver in terms of why farmers should do it. John, you're a farmer. Why did you create an animal health plan? Had you big issues, or what was the story?
Yeah, Jack. I think it's much more simple than that. It's about saving money. Animal health planning to me is about retaining animals in the herd at full production for longer, whilst reducing replacement rate and reducing the cost of the animal health. For me, animal health planning is about improving cow flow, improving the milking routine, and improving calf facilities. Those are the biggest drivers for animal health, from feet, mastitis, and calf health. If we can get those three things right, it'll vastly improve the profitability of the farm. The health planning isn't necessarily to do with which antibiotics to use or which vaccine to use. It is about how do you prevent needing those things.
Okay, I hear you, John, but I suppose I'm interested in, that conversation that you started with your vet, Keith Laughlin. Like, I mean, why did that start? Was it because you had a problem? Obviously, you're saying that, listen, yeah, it makes better sense. It makes good sense for our business to do that in terms of efficiency, etc., and that kind of thing. But, like, was it triggered, that conversation to have an animal health plan, was it triggered by a problem or not?
No one problem. There was a collection of many different things, from higher cell count than what should have been, cow feet issues that just weren't getting on top of, calf pneumonia problems and calf scar problems, which were never all that bad, but they were never as good as they could have been. And then having a conversation with the vet as to how to make small increments to improve each of those problems led then to developing a health plan and keeping on top of it every year.
Yeah, good man. I hear you. It brings all those issues together, and like every farm has a touch of what you talked about, so it does bring those issues together and keeps it top of the agenda. So, right, I've asked the vet, I've asked the advisor, and I've asked the farmer in terms of why an animal health plan. I said I'd ask the purchaser of the milk, so I went to Niall McCarron earlier. He's a dairy development advisor with Lakeland Dairies, and I asked him why animal health was important for Lakeland Dairies. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, obviously, within Lakeland, what we're trying to do here is to produce wholesome, natural products to sell across the world, and for those products to be the highest possible quality. And the high quality milk that we collect from our members across Northern Ireland, across the northern half of the island, that's the building block for all those dairy products. And high quality milk is obviously best produced from healthy cows. Healthy cow is a profitable cow for our members, for our suppliers. If they're healthy if the cows are healthy, they're profitable, they're more sustainable. So that's all very important. Sustainability be bandied about, but animal health plays a massive role in the whole sustainability piece. So your healthy cow, Jack, stays in the herd longer. She produces more milk. She delivers a calf every year for sale or as a replacement. She's a lower carbon footprint. The farms with healthy cows will have a lower replacement rate, so there's a cost saving mechanism in there as well. So look, animal health's critical to our suppliers, but also critical to us as a dairy processing business.
Okay, our host farmer this evening is John Oliver, one of your suppliers up in County Derry. I mean, in light of Lakeland, I suppose, asking suppliers in Northern Ireland to become Red Tractor certified, what impact does that have on kind of from an animal health perspective?
Well, we're a year into the process of Red Tractor, and I think we're somewhere 98% Red Tractor certified at this point. But within the Red Tractor quality assurance scheme, each farmer must sit down with their vet and have an animal health plan included. This has to be written in and reviewed in conjunction with their vets. They also have to do a written animal health and performance review each year as part of the renewal of the Red Tractor scheme. Also, a key part of Red Tractor is the whole area in terms of the reduction in antibiotic use on dairy farms. Farms with solid animal health plan in place will have healthier cows, less infection, and less infection means less antibiotics. So that's ticks all the boxes, I suppose, from our perspective.
Okay, so that was Niall McCarron from Lakeland Dairies, I suppose, summarising a lot of what our vet Keith Laughlin said, and again some of the stuff that John and Aidan had said in terms of why an animal health plan is important. And he also touched off some of the issues, like the challenges down the line in terms of antibiotic resistance that's coming up. And again, we'll touch off that later in the webinar. My next big question, I suppose, is what should an animal health plan contain? So, Keith, if I was to look to you first in terms of what do you think, kind of, what should a good animal health plan look like?
Well, as I said in my intro, I think that certainly the most important thing is an animal health plan should be a working document. I mean, it's not intended to replace the role of the vet on farm, it's intended to enhance that role. And it should involve then, in the process of setting up that herd health plan, discussions with the farmer to establish actually from his records, from APHIS records, exactly what the health status on the farm is. You can't start to put the program in place to maintain or to improve health unless you actually know what base level you're starting from. So we need to get that benchmark through the health plan. And the early pages of the health plan are basically revolving around doing that. And the early pages as well, and we've also got a diary set out, which is an immediate reference point so that anybody that's on the farm can go and see what is to be done. It's set out in the form of a diary, a calendar, month by month for each individual group of animals on the farm, what treatments will be due that month. So there's a quick reference point that the farmer can go and say, okay, it's August, what do we want to have to do this month? We get that in place to be able to do that. If you make management of the farm easy on a day-to-day basis, it happens. If it's not easy, if the farmer has to go looking for it, then things don't happen, and that's when things can start to go wrong. And then from the data that we've gathered to benchmark where the health issues are on farm, what we'll do then is actually ask the farmer, like, well, okay, in your opinion, what do you think is the number one health issue? What is the thing that keeps you awake at night, that costs you most money, that causes you the most concern? And that will be then prioritized as the first thing to address on the health plan. And we'll do that for the top 2 or 3 things. I don't think you want to set too many targets year on year. Reviews are done probably every year, and every year you say, okay, what are we going to tackle this year? What are we going to try and improve this year? And hopefully through actually using a herd health plan on farm, you make progress as time goes on.
Yeah, I like it. So, I mean, as you say, it's a live document. It maybe doesn't touch off everything, but it touches off the key issues for the farmer. John, if I was to look to you, I mean, you said to us previously that it brought together some of all the issues that are happening on the farm in terms of the animal health space. But I mean, I suppose what does your plan look like? And I suppose is it really a live document?
I find most helpful from my health plan and some of the software I use along with the farm is the records of historical events and measurements of the number of cows with sore feet, number of cows that have mastitis, a record of the calves that took pneumonia. So I have an idea of what was going on in the past. And then within the herd health plan, we have noted down what the causes are of those problems, what the treatments are for them, and then subsequently how to improve and prevent those problems from happening again. And then when we review it then, say now this year, reviewing it again, we can see if we have made an improvement, what has worked, what hasn't worked. And then, for instance, 3 years ago, what was keeping me awake at night was cows' feet. However, we have made small changes within the milking routine and within cow housing facilities. Cows' feet is now it's not my number one problem now. We've moved on to something else, and because I have the historical data there, I find that the most helpful part of it.
Okay, I hear you, John. So you're using it, a lot as a recording mechanism, and that keeps it live and that puts real numbers on issues rather than you just kind of assuming that I had 10 lameness cases or whatever last year. You're putting real numbers on it. Aidan, you're working with a lot of dairy farmers across Northern Ireland. How many of them do you reckon have a kind of a live working animal health plan?
Jack, that's a very good question. As Niall already alluded to in his piece there, to qualify for red tractor payments, farmers have to have an animal health plan. And yes, dairy farmers that participated in the Business Development Group programme have been given an opportunity in earlier years to complete an animal health plan. However, it's difficult to assess how many of those farmers are actually utilising those plans in the manner that we would like them to, as Keith has already alluded to. So I'd like to think that there is some areas for development there, and it's certainly something we're focusing on within the project, for the farmers to have an active working plan that they can actually utilise and benefit from in their businesses.
I mean, lads, in fairness, you've put together a template or a document. You've put together, I think it's, 17, 18, 20 pages, something like that, in terms of some of the key issues. So Keith, yourself and Aidan and John, you've been kind of working on getting this template together. I mean, are you happy with what's included? Keith touched off it, in terms of there's a calendar, there's maybe the top 3 or 4 animal health issues. I mean, will that vary between farm, I suppose, is my question, or can that template that you use be used as a starter pack for kind of trying to investigate an animal health issue on a farm? Keith, if I come to you first on that.
Yes, Jack, absolutely. Every farm will have different health priorities depending on the individual situation on their farm, and the flexibility is within the programme to identify which of those are the ones to target. Later in the actual document itself, we do have sort of standard operating procedures for various conditions that are common to all farms. There are basic recommendations in there for management of, the likes of calf scar problems, calf pneumonia problems, for treatment of the newborn calf, colostrum feeding. Those don't vary an awful lot farm to farm, so it is possible to put reasonably standard answers to those in there. It is also totally editable. That, I mean, the individual farm, if the individual vet for that farm wishes to make changes to that format, they can do. But it's just to try and make the document a little bit smoother to run. And it takes quite a while to go through an animal health plan with a farm. You're talking of upwards of an hour and a half to 2 hours on farm. And it's quite difficult to get both the farmer and the vet to commit that time to do that. So hopefully we've got a document that is usable and reasonably easy to do, and actually will provide something in terms of the management of the farm.
Aidan, looking at you in terms of that animal health plan, will you be using that on the other monitor farmers in the DairyLink programme?
Absolutely, Jack. It's, as Keith highlighted there, it's a working document there. It highlights a lot of priorities that the farmer can focus on in his business within the next 12 months. The calendar that he mentioned as well is also very useful, in that it makes it very easy for the farmer to focus on the tasks that are required on the farm and when they need to be done. So yes, the farmers at this stage are in the process of completing animal health plans with their own vets. And I'd like to think, yes, we'll be continuing to monitor that as time goes on.
Okay, lads, good to hear, and we'll come back to that animal health plan later in the, towards the end of the program. But obviously, farmers that are watching this or listening to this can obviously download that plan, that starter plan, that template that you have put a bit of work into. So that'll be good for them in terms of an output. I asked actually Sarah Campbell, she's a technical advisor with MSD Animal Health. I asked her about that issue around the variation from farm to farm, and there's always a lot of talk about testing bugs and testing various issues on farms. So I just asked her about that. How can an animal health plan manage that farm to farm variation, some of the issues that are individual to a particular farm? Here's what she had to say.
The short answer to that, Jack, really is to take samples. Okay, so if you have an animal that is sick, say for example it's got respiratory disease or it has diarrhea, the important thing is to engage with your vet and ask them to take samples, because if you don't, all you're doing is treating the signs. You're treating the runny nose, you're treating the temperature, or you're treating the dehydration, but you're not actually getting to the root cause. You're not actually finding exactly what bug am I dealing with, because there's very many different bugs that cause disease, and how we deal with them, or the changes that we'll make to try and reduce the risk of this happening again, is very different depending on that particular bug, whether it's a virus or whether it's a bacteria. So the short answer, of course, is to take samples. They can often be inconclusive, or sometimes we get no results back, or several times we'll get results back long after the animal has even recovered, or maybe even died. And so sometimes the sample results that we get back actually won't bear any difference to that particular animal and the course of treatment. But what it does do is it helps us build up a picture and a profile of that farm, so we can say with certainty, yes, X, Y, or Z bug is present on that farm, and it's something that then we'll take into consideration when, say, for example, we're considering, are we going to feed colostrum, are we going to pasteurize colostrum, are we going to practice snatch calving, and things like that.
I mean, Sarah, obviously Keith and John have a good relationship. I mean, it's important that the vet and the farmer have a kind of a good relationship, because I mean it's crucial to developing that plan for that particular farm, isn't it? You know, because I mean, essentially you're creating a bespoke plan for that farm. So I mean, it takes a little bit of toing and froing. And look, I'll say some vets are good at communicating with farmers, some are not. You know, and the same way, vice versa, with farmers that are in terms of communicating with their vet. So I mean, it's important to have a good relationship with the vet to kind of create that bespoke animal health plan.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of trust involved there, Jack, especially whenever you're giving advice on such a huge scale, because Keith and John are involved with the whole herd approach here, which is so important. And the concern is that if we make an adjustment or a change, it's going to have a huge impact going forward. And as well as that, any changes have to be manageable. It has to be something that John can actually do. So if you have a vet that comes on board that maybe isn't overly knowledgeable about the actual ability and the amount of labour, etc., that's available on that farm, there really isn't any point in suggesting lots of different management and practice changes if it can't actually be carried out.
Okay, that was MSD's Sarah Campbell talking about that relationship between the farmer and the vet, which is crucial to, I suppose, a successful animal health plan. John Oliver, looking to you, you obviously have a good relationship with your vet, Keith. I mean, how does this animal health plan become useful for you?
Yeah, Jack, I have to agree with some of what Sarah had said with regards to making the health plan work for the individual farm. I think anyway, the health plan should be simple and unbureaucratic and easy to look at and refer to, because if it's not easy, it's not going to be looked at. I think there's two parts to the health plan for me. One is the strategic planning, where long term, for instance, improving cow feet or improving cell count is something you do long term, and then the short term is developing standard operating procedures for example, for the calf house. If a 2-week-old calf takes scar, what do you do? And then with a well-developed health plan, the vet has already told me what to do. You have it written down, and I just go and refer to it.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. I mean, Keith, again, to come to you, I suppose, on that kind of similar type question. I mean, would you agree with John? It needs to be simple. It needs to be kind of very understandable and not too much jargon.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. As I say, it is a working document, and as John said, if it's tied down in bureaucracy, then I think that's a total turn off to most farmers. I mean, they just won't refer to it at all. But John says is quite right. It's intended to be there. Again, calf rearing is a very good example to use. I mean, quite often that is one of the more common things that you'll encounter on farm, and it's one of the questions the farmer wants answered pretty quickly. You know, what do I do for this calf? How do I treat this calf? And we have in a specific herd health plan, you can put down protocols that will apply to that farm, which means that he doesn't have to run to phone the farmer forever, or to phone the vet for every sick calf to say what should I treat this with. So yeah, it has to be a simple, reasonably concise. We make it as concise as we can, but when you can't gloss over everything, there's an awful lot to cover in herd health, and something that I can refer to very quickly.
Aidan, looking at you in terms of making that animal health plan useful, anything else to add, we'll say, apart from what the two lads have said?
Yes, Jack, I think I would agree with everything that both Keith and John have already said. The only other thing that springs to mind is that there is a need to have a good set of herd health records there that allows the likes of Keith and John to identify issues that need to be addressed. So it's important that it is included in an animal health plan. The standard operating procedures is something as well. It's important that they are thorough. For example, I think I can think of an example there that John and Keith have produced in terms of the plan they produced for dealing with mastitis. Is that John's now taking milk culture samples, which he hadn't been doing previously, which should help to identify whatever organisms are present there that need to be treated or whatever. So, which he wasn't doing before, and that should help reduce incidences of mastitis in the long term.
Aidan, you talk about, as you say, that mastitis piece, but is that one of the challenges of this animal health planning, is that sometimes the answer you'll get back, you'll have 4 or 5 different pathogens that are causing that mastitis, and I suppose it's trying to kind of decipher that and get something for that for the farmer is maybe one of the challenges, Keith. You know, that you'll get a result, you'll get that it's strep, that it's staph, that it's, you know, that all these pathogens are there. I mean, what does that do for kind of pinpointing what the problem is and what the farmer can do to act on it?
Generally, good sets of samples taken will actually give you good results that you can make a good assessment of what's actually happening based on. As you say, Jack, things are very rarely simple. It's rarely just one organism, but there is usually a pattern that develops where one is obviously proving to be the main problem. Between that and the milk recording results, you can work out fairly well where the problem is likely to be. And really, in mastitis terms, we're really talking 2 options. It's either environmental mastitis or contagious mastitis. And once you know which of those it is, then the management becomes an awful lot more simple because they spread quite differently.
Okay, so I hear you, Keith. It builds into the information that's available for the farm, and that you can put together a practice knowing that and knowing the milk recording. You can build a picture for the farm. If we were to stand back maybe from the whole animal health plan piece in terms of Keith and John Oliver, I mean, there are other initiatives at an industry level that take place. And earlier I spoke to Joe Patton about cell check in the Republic of Ireland in terms of how it operates in terms of mastitis prevention and how that might impact on a farm level.
I suppose the big ones that have happened in the Republic over the last number of years, particularly from a production disease point of view, would probably be cell count, certainly, and also there's been quite a bit of work done over the last number of years on health in calves, essentially. So really managing the spring flush of calves. So and that would be the 2 main issues, I suppose, we could look at. So maybe if we take the cell count one first, I suppose that there's a long-standing campaign at this stage between the AHI department, ourselves, and Teagasc, the cell check program, which has borne fruit actually in terms of national cell count and individuals. You know, national cell count numbers are going in the right direction, and for individual farms, obviously their cell counts are improving as well.
And Joe, if I was to ask you, like, you know, that initiative, will say, that where you bring the different organizations together, has that worked, we'll say, in terms of success? You've obviously said the cell check piece, the cell count is reducing, but in terms of making it happen, you know, does that teaming together of resources bring the piece together, you know, better, quicker, or whatever? I mean, is it absolutely necessary to get that team approach?
I think it probably is, Jack. Now, look, we're under no illusions here. I mean, teams in these disciplines, it takes time to get those off the ground, and maybe it's a new thing for maybe a lot of the people involved. I suppose we had in the early stages anyway. There were a lot of committee meetings and a lot of to-ing and fro-ing, and maybe a bit of persuasion here and there to get things moving. But once that was done, and once people settled into the notion that, everybody was on the one page and everybody really wanted the same thing out of it, which was an improvement in the animal health metric, in whichever of them it was. Once people were knew they were going in the same direction for that, things started to move then on the ground. So look, committees are fine, and we've all sat in enough committees over the years to know that we need action on the ground ultimately from whatever is decided there. So once a good policy framework was put in place, and a good framework for making those decisions, I think we started to see progress on the ground, and people at farm level then were clear as to what people were trying to achieve. And I suppose, from a farmer's perspective too, you have to remember that, when there is an issue with something like cell count, for example, if you're listening to 4 or 5 different people giving you good advice, and it may all be good advice, but it may seem a little bit contradictory at times, depending on who you're talking to. Once we clarified that we had everybody on the one page and everyone moving in the same direction, that team approach or that collegiate approach has helped to clarify things and move things forward from the farmer's perspective. So I suppose if you're in the trenches and you're dealing with something like a cell count issue, it is good to know that you've got a team of people from all different disciplines working together to move you in the right direction, rather than maybe receiving what might seem to be contradictory advice from time to time.
Aidan, just listening to Joe Patton there in terms of that cell check program and the kind of the benefits that they've seen through that, I suppose that coordinated approach. Is there any particular programs in Northern Ireland that you're aware of in that animal health space that are kind of using that approach?
To the best of my knowledge, Jack, at this moment in time, I'm not aware that there's an approach similar to what Joe described. Certainly, the dairy industry is very much focused on cell count. There is a bonus in payment and a penalty system offered by the processors, depending on what your cell count is. Every milk producer is aware of that, and they want to try and produce milk with as low a cell count as they can. And to that end, they will work with their vets, advisors, or indeed there are specialist consultants out there dealing with those issues. But long sure is, I could stand to be corrected, but I'm not aware that such a scheme exists in Northern Ireland at this moment in time.
Keith, again, just coming back on what Joe said in terms of, that team approach, that coordinated approach, like effectively it's a case of where a John Oliver, a farmer, would have his vet, he'd have his advisor, he'd have his milk machine technician, he'd have his, other people that impact on milk quality, maybe someone from Lakeland Dairies sitting around that table, and they're taking a team approach to solve that problem, like, for example, mastitis on that farm. Would you see an advantage to that type of an approach?
Yes, Jack, I think that actually was a very interesting part from Joe. I think there's an awful lot of scope in that. As we've said, mastitis is very much a management disease on farms. I mean, if everybody that's involved in the management of the various different sides to milk production, as you say, like particularly including the milking machine technician, I mean, a lot of vets will be aware that milking machine function can contribute certainly to the cause or spread of mastitis problems, but we don't actually have access to the technician. So I would say it would be very beneficial to have a team approach to the problem.
Staying with that whole area of mastitis and antibiotic reduction, I had a chat earlier with our own Peter McCann from the Farmers Journal about antibiotic usage in the dairy herd and the other sectors within agri across Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I suppose the pigs and poultry have led the way really this last few years with reducing antimicrobial use. And the poultry sector in Northern Ireland, usage is down about 70% over this last few years, and the pigs is down about 35%. So dairy and beef tend to be the ones that the focus is on now to pull that on down. But across all sectors, there was a target within the department up here to reduce antibiotic usage by 25% by the year 2020. But that was actually achieved 2 years early. So it is all fairly positive so far, but there still is work to do. I suppose the animal health plans that we're talking about here for John's farm, like that's really the kind of vision for all sectors. All farm quality assurance schemes need to have animal health plans in place. And more recently, the beef and lamb scheme up here, it became mandatory for every participant to attend a workshop, be certified on antibiotic usage and antibiotics and that sort of thing. So there's 14,000 farmers are been hit with that over the next few years, So it's all quite positive that way, but there still is room to go. There is something in the region of 60,000 cattle rendered here every year, which is almost a full factory's kill, really. So there still is a lot of scope to improve that and take that preventative approach to animal health as opposed to firefighting. The sheep sector is like there's a focus there too, but in fairness, there seems to be less antibiotics used on sheep farms. The aim there, I suppose, is maybe looking towards the use of vaccines, especially for foot rot and things like that. So there's less antibiotics used for lameness problems in sheep farms.
Okay, thanks to our own Peter McCann there in terms of some of the stats around antibiotic usage and where the industry needs to go in terms of reducing antibiotics. So that's obviously a challenge for the future. I mean, taking it back to the present, John Oliver, if I was to look for you as a kind of a summary comment, as a kind of a wrap to the the webinar, I mean, you're obviously an advocate for animal health planning, but just kind of maybe remind us or reinforce why animal health planning is important for your business.
Yeah, well, animal health it's one of the biggest cost drivers of the whole business. I mean, I sit down with my nutritionist once a month to discuss feeding the cows, and we review how the cows performed in the previous month, and we compare that to the same month last year, and we're already planning for feed for next year, and this is only August. So animal health planning for me is no different. I say I'm not ready to dry off yet, but I'm already planning to dry off. I can look back at my health plan from last year and see what I did last year. We used dry cow therapy last year, so I'll be looking back at my milk recording to see how cell counts were in early lactation, to see if I need to change the level of cell count that I use for selective dry cow therapy and things like that. So it is for me. It is all about planning and record keeping and making a continuous improvement on the animal health side of things to improve. Well, I suppose we're trying to improve our animal welfare, which subsequently will drive our profits.
Yeah, good man. Good summary, John. You're dead right. Keith, in terms of that actual physical document, that animal health plan that yourself and Aidan have kind of created with John in terms of, that template, that physical plan, again, I suppose summarize, what's important to have in that document.
Yeah, I hope and I think, Jack, that we've managed to produce a document that is a template document that is reasonably easy to use, and that will, through being editable, will be able to produce a document specific to the individual farm, to provide a document that, as John quite rightly says, he can use day and daily to make decisions on the farm. And I think it's vital that we have herd health plans in place on farms, tying in with what Peter was saying. I mean, the ultimate driver for this is going to be antibiotic availability, antibiotic resistance, and the drive to reduce the amount of antibiotics is going to mean that we have to have better animal health. And one of the key building blocks in that is an active health plan document that actually will help us to improve the management and the welfare of our cattle.
Good, yeah, exactly. It's coming at us down the line in terms of the antibiotic reduction, no doubt. Aidan, again, I suppose just to wrap with you, I mean, will farmers, if they participate and get involved in animal health planning on their farm, like will they benefit, do you reckon?
Absolutely, Jack. As far as I'm concerned, a good active animal health plan will benefit your business in terms of improving animal health, cow longevity, and indeed profitability. But for that plan to be a good active plan, you need to be prepared to put a bit of work into it. But if you put that work into it, I'm convinced you will see the benefit of that in your business.
Okay, folks, listen, we've had a busy show. We've had a good chat around animal health planning and what it is and what it's about. A huge thank you to our virtual host farmer, John Oliver from Limavady County Derry, Keith Laughlin, our vet associated with John Oliver, and our own Aidan Cushnahan in terms of the DairyLink program advisor. For those of you that are maybe interested in kind of maybe creating an animal health plan for your own farm, you can download that template that Keith and Aidan and John have created in terms of that DairyLink template for animal health planning. You can download it here at the address on screen, or visit farmersjournal.ie/DairyLink. But again, all the stakeholders that are involved in this program will have access to that plan. So again, let me remind you that the partners in this DairyLink program are CAFRE and AFBI in Northern Ireland, MSD Animal Health and Lakeland Dairies. and the Journal in terms of publishing that weekly piece in terms of what's happening on the DairyLink farms. So, folks, I mean, look, we've had a good chat around animal health. We've talked about the why, and as John Oliver summarised very, very succinctly, it's about sterling, it's about euros, it's about money. At the end of the day, it's about profit. We talked about how, and we had Keith talking about what should be included in that animal health plan. And I suppose we summarised and talked about like that. Listen, it's absolutely important for all farmers to be involved in animal health planning, and you know, it's up to each individual farm to develop a plan for their own business. So listen, with that, I think we'll say goodbye and the best of luck in terms of animal health planning. Stay safe and stay farming.